I went from 3 hours of mental work a week to 50 hours of mental work a week as an INTP, and the most important breakthrough that I had in eliminating the procrastination that was keeping me from doing more work was realizing I'm an NTP and realizing more, analyzing more about what procrastination really is and how it works. Right? If you know our cognitive functions, TI is very important, analyzing things. We can get stuck in that, and that can be a cause of procrastination. But if you want to fix your procrastination, you have to analyze it and understand it and then go from there. And what I see a lot is that a lot of procrastination advice is quite superficial. And usually it tackles procrastination as if it is just one singular issue, when in reality, there's different types of procrastination that perhaps overlap a little bit, but that are still different and need to be tackled differently. And understanding that is going to be the breakthrough for you in solving the actual procrastination. So I had to realize myself that there are two main types of procrastination that I want to get into today that you need to understand, or otherwise you'll simply stay stuck. And I don't need to explain to INTPs that it sucks to stay stuck in procrastination. So let's just get into the two standard types of procrastination. The first one is habitual neurological, and the second one is psycho-emotional. And I'll just get into each of these with their respective solutions in the coming 10, 15, 20 minutes. And leave it at that. And I want to make this into a bit more of a, not necessarily a series, but a group of videos that are all related, because I could get into each of the respective topics for hours, but I just want to keep this a bit more brief. So first, and probably the main modern type of procrastination, is habitual neurological. I think most of us will have seen the video, the TED talk, TEDx talk, whatever it's called, about procrastination, which has like 80 million views or whatever. And it talks about the rational mind versus the instant gratification monkey, right? So there are many distractions: social media, Netflix, video games, junk food, whatever. There's a lot on the internet, mostly, and in the world in general, that is very high stimulus for very low effort. And when that is your habitual state of being, that is what you're used to, it's going to be difficult, regardless of the other aspects of procrastination, to get the work done, because doing the work, doing your homework, working on a report for your, working on a part of your thesis, doing work for your job is not as rewarding as what something else you could be doing, nor is it as easy. And so it becomes difficult to do. And so you procrastinate on it. Now, when you look at the habitual stuff, there's basically two ways in which habits play a role in procrastination. The first one is that procrastination is a habit in itself, and I'll get into that in a bit. And the second thing is that habits that you do around the work that you want to do make it easier or more difficult to get the work done or to start the work. So what I mean by that is, when you are used to video gaming all day while eating junk food, and whenever you die in video game and wait to be respawned, you go on your Instagram, you go on a dating app, you go on whatever, it's going to be immensely difficult to transition from that state of being, high stimulus, low effort, to something where you have to do more effort to get less of a neurological reward. And so, to just get into it, if you want to solve your procrastination and you are currently habitually gaming for many hours, watching videos for many hours, and I don't think I need to explain this to you, but if you're doing those kinds of habits for many hours, that's going to make it more difficult to fix it. and I'll get into how you can actually change your habits around procrastination later. But let's first get into the other type of habitual, or the other aspect of habits when it comes to procrastination, which is that procrastination is a habit in and of itself. So if you have read Atomic Habits, you will know. If not, I suggest you read it. But briefly, a habit consists of 4 elements that go on into a continuous loop. They are cue, craving, response, and reward. Now, in the specific case of, let's say, gaming, let's use that as an example. The cue is that you wake up and you see your PlayStation or whatever. You get a craving to play the games, to go into the challenges, to have fun with people, with friends, to progress, or whatever reward you get neurologically from it. The response is that you sit down at your desk to game, and the reward is that you get all of the highs and lows of gaming, the epic moments or the tragedy in the story that you're guiding the characters through, whatever it is, you're getting a reward. And because of that, next time you see your console, you get the cue, and then it goes all over again. Now, when it comes to the habit itself of procrastination, the cue is that you sit down, or not even, but you realize you need to do work. The craving then, in the specific case of procrastination, partly is to do the work. But the overpowering craving is to not do the work. Because it stresses you out, because it triggers some fear in you, or simply because it's relatively boring or hard. So your response is to procrastinate with whatever, doesn't matter what alternative you have, but you procrastinate, and therefore you get a reward. You procrastinate or you respond either by gaming or doing something else, doing a different habit, and the reward is that is way more fun. Or you respond by doing whatever, and the reward is that you have a relief of stress and a relief of the fear, because you distract yourself or you do whatever it takes to numb or medicate those stressful feelings. So I'm going to make a video about this later on, where I really go into depth into the systems that you need as an INTP. Because if you have read Atomic Habits, you will know it is not the goals. You don't rise to the level of your goals, which is whatever you're procrastinating on, and getting that done. You fall back on the level of your systems. And what does that look like? You have a certain identity. From your identity follow certain systems or habits, basically. And from that system flow your actions and your decisions. Now, that means if you want to eliminate your procrastination, you will have to change your system. You will have to change your habits. And that goes into 2 things. One is the habits around the work, and then there is the habit of sitting down to do the work and then procrastinating instead. Again, I'm going to make a video about that more in depth, but this is probably something you already rationally know. It's about implementing that, and so I want to get into that in the next video, or in one of the coming videos. But you cannot be productive when you are doing things that give you more of a reward for less effort. If you do that, you're not going to do something high effort, low reward later. Plus, even if you were to break through that, and you are still in the habit of sitting down to do the work and then going onto whatever website, like I always used to go to news websites. I wasn't interested, but that was what I would do to tell myself I was still remotely productive. And you need to break through that individual habit. Atomic Habits is a great book. if you want to get started on that already, just read it and implement it. But well, that's an issue sometimes. Anyway, the second type is perhaps less common in the general population and already starts to become more of an issue for INTPs specifically. And this is psycho-emotional procrastination, which is a fancy word for saying fear. You fear something, and that leads to the procrastination. So with the habits, we saw that you have both the habit in the moment and the habits around doing the work. In the case of fear, it's mostly about what happens in the moment. Like I mentioned, the habit of procrastination can be that you get a cue, which is, oh yeah, I need to do the work. The craving is then, or the cue is actually not realizing you need to do the work. The cue is realizing you fear something about doing the work. What if I fail? What if I don't do well? What if it's not perfect? What if it's not the way I want it to be? That then leads to a craving of relieving yourself from that fear and the stress that comes from it. So your response is to procrastinate and distract yourself, and the reward is stress relief. So this is really where we get into procrastination in the moment. And the thing we need to realize when it comes to this fear is that the fear is never really rational. I've procrastinated on things where I rationally knew that I had a redo on an exam, and the best thing to do would be to study, to potentially fail the exam, but not that significantly, and then use the feedback from the exam to do better on the retry. Makes perfect sense. For some reason, instead, I didn't do anything because I told myself that was going to be a second chance anyway. And then I didn't do the rational thing, which is making the best of that first opportunity for feedback. And instead, I would hand in nothing. So it doesn't make rational sense. It's more about our programming and something going on in the subconscious, right? In our beliefs, in our subconscious way of looking at things. Now, why is this more so of an issue for INTPs than for people in general? Well, INTPs are introspective and analytical, and it can explore and see many different opportunities or pathways. And so what that looks like is when you want to sit down to make a report for school or for work, when you want to sit down to do anything, you start to see all of the opportunities in which what you can create can be great. You start to realize, oh my God, that's something I could do. That's something that would be valuable for my client, or for that will help me get a good grade because the teacher will love it. You see so many different opportunities for you to make something great. That's your NE, right? Extroverted intuition. Then your dominant cognitive function, TI, or introverted thinking or analysis, comes in as well and starts to connect the dots of how you can add those things together. But it also starts to analyze how there's perhaps flaws in all of the ideas that are coming up for you. And when you start to have that, and the TI-NE combination starts to analyze and explore, you're quickly going to realize there's a potential to do it great, but that also means that there's a lot that you could lack or miss out on or not do as well as you can. Because the truth is, you could probably spend thousands of hours on something that only requires 10 hours or 20 hours to get a good grade for, or to get a positive response from your clients, whatever it is. But, and I just lost my train of thought for a little bit. But this TI-NE combination exposes to you how you could make something great, but how you then also can do a lot wrong. And because the human brain, for everyone, is very wired towards negativity, INTPs are going to get stuck in that negativity, in the fear of not having done what they could have done, in the fear of missing out on so much. What if the client asks about this? What if I don't write a single thing about that? It's going to make me look like an idiot. And that's where the fear comes in. Why are human beings more wired for negativity? Well, positive things evolutionarily, like eating food, can wait for a couple of weeks. Drinking water can wait for a couple of days. Sleeping can wait if need be. But the negative things are usually way more urgent. A predator, a fire, whatever it is. So negativity leads to a lot more feelings, and that then results in difference in our actions. There's a book that explained your programming leads to your beliefs, leads to your thoughts, leads to your feelings, lead to your actions. Right? So when you believe you could do great, you also believe that there's a lot you can lack on, and you realize that, and so you feel the negative things more than you feel the positive things, and that then leads to certain actions, right? Andrew Kirby said, procrastination is when our negative happens, when our negative feelings outweigh our positive feelings. There's a lot more. I couldn't go into that. When it comes to the cognitive functions, you have NI as well, which is your critic function. And it's about asking yourself whether you're on the right path. And when that is in your critic function, you continuously ask yourself, am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? Am I prioritizing the right thing? That adds onto it as well. Anyway, like I said before, your programming leads to your beliefs, leads to your thoughts, leads to your feelings, leads to your actions, leads to your results. And so procrastination is an action, namely doing something else than what you're supposed to be doing. And so the thing that is before that is feelings. What am I feeling when I sit down to do a certain task? And because we're very analytical, we see a lot. And because when we see an equal amount of positive and negative things, the negative things will outweigh the positive feelings, you're going to procrastinate. And so you have to, and this is where we get into the solution. The solution for habits was changing your habits through a proven system. For example, the atomic habit system. But fear requires something different. Feelings require something different. And this is quite a challenge, and I haven't done this as much as I want to. But what I really think the solution is here in overcoming this is reflecting and reframing. So what I mean by that is when you, for some reason, fear very much so getting a bad grade or disappointing your client as a freelancer or whatever it is that you do, you need to realize that procrastination isn't gonna solve the issue. If you're fearful about disappointing someone, then the best thing to do, obviously, is to realize that doesn't matter that much. But more importantly, the way to prevent it is to do the action, not to procrastinate. And so our feelings stem from our thoughts, beliefs, programming. And so we need to reframe something in that in order to make us realize that even though there is fear, we should still do the action, right? When our positive feelings are bigger than our negative feelings, we'll do a certain action. And so reframing something in us to lower our negative feelings and increase our positive feelings at the thought of doing something will help us do the thing. And again, in future videos, I'll go way more in depth into this because, again, could talk about this for hours. There's so much written on this there's so much ancient wisdom, scientific evidence, random anecdotal content on the internet, all of which we could synthesize into solutions for that. But I'll leave that for later. In short, there's two types of procrastination. Both can be solved using our TI, using our incredible hunger and skill for analysis. When we analyze why we do certain habits and we analyze what we need to improve, that then sets us up to actually do something about our habits, whether that's the habit of procrastination itself or habits around our work that cause us to procrastinate when we sit down to get stuff done. And our TI can help us reframe our own stupidity, so to say, when it comes to psycho-emotional procrastination. So for habitual procrastination or habitual neurological procrastination, you want to implement a system, a proven system to deal with habits. Really that simple. And to deal with psycho-emotional procrastination, we want to introduce a habit specifically of changing that loop, right? So cue, craving, response, reward. The cue is I dread something. I fear that I'm gonna miss out, that I'm gonna not do something as well as I can. I'm gonna fear that I'm gonna lack so much when it comes to performing something. The craving then is to procrastinate, is to either medicate with junk food, with social media, with video games, with telling ourselves certain stories, whatever it is. There's going to be craving to do whatever is going to help us from getting away from the action. And then we have an habitual response that leads to a reward, but that reward is short-term and not really real. So somewhere between craving and response, we need to introduce something, namely reflection and reframing, that triggers a different response and leads to a different reward, namely a more fulfilling long-term reward of actually doing certain actions rather than the reward of escaping our stress and fear, which is only short-term. That's really it. Now, I have a lot of plans for this channel. I really want to take this far because I don't see a lot of non-AI content on INTPs specifically. And ever since finding out that I'm an INTP a year ago, I have absolutely made the most progress when it comes to working on my purpose, stopping my procrastination, getting more productive, and performing better. As well as how I feel generally, how I am generally. As an INTP, I think it's very important that you're doing well in the occupational realm, whether that's study, work, business, whatever, in order to still feel good and have a good, positive social life as well. I'm not very social, but whenever I'm not dealing with this perpetual procrastination, that is when I can actually be relatively present and positive and fun to be around. So I have this YouTube channel. Expect more videos from it. A new video will be out on Sunday. And I hope I can keep up like bi-weekly. I hope I can keep up 2 videos a week for the coming weeks. And perhaps even for longer. But I have certain ideas of what I want to get at now. Anyway, I have a free community as well that allows us to sort of chat. You can chat with me in the DM. You can ask things to the community as well of other INTPs. There's about 35 people in there right now. In there as well, I will drop the text version of what I'm explaining right now. Right now, I'm just reading off some bullet points. I want to write this out, not transcribe this with AI, but really write out all of the thoughts that I have about this, so you have something you can look at repeatedly instead of always having to watch the video. So I'll drop that in my free community. The link is in the description below. It's also where I give you updates on the videos that are to come. So the next video will be about my story specifically and how I went from, like I said, 3 hours to 50 hours of mental work. I'll also have a video afterwards about the systems that I mentioned. So the systems you need to put in place to deal with the habitual neurological procrastination, as well as the systems you need to put in place to deal with the psycho-emotional procrastination. Afterwards, we'll get into the most important lever to pull if you really want to change your systems, your actions, if you really want to eliminate your procrastination, the main lever to pull on. And afterwards, I think there's still much more to be said about INTP procrastination. But for now, this is it. So thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Again, check out the free community. If you have any questions or things you want to talk to me about, you can comment as well on this YouTube video. If you have any suggestions for videos, whatever it is, let me know. And yeah, see you soon. See you in 2 days.